Yesterday we heard from the Gospel of John about becoming children of God by receiving and believing in Jesus. And I very intentionally chose for today a passage from the first letter of John, 1 John chapter 3. I'd encourage you to read verses 1 through 10. And you'll hear a really, really strong similarity between the two passages. 1 John 3 begins, "See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him." And again, we're talking this week about the family of God, and both in John's Gospel and in the first letter of John, you see that it's because of the love of God the Father that we have the opportunity, the privilege, the blessing of being called children of God. And John asserts, and that is what we are. Being a child of God is not something that we earn. It's a gift. And frankly, we have pretty much nothing to do with it. And if you think about your own physical birth, how much influence did you have on being physically born yourself? Basically none, because you did not exist. But in a similar way, spiritually, it is the love of God the Father that enables us to live as God's children and to be called children of God. And John makes this distinction that the reason the world does not know us, and by that John is saying the world doesn't understand why do we live the way we do as believers, as Christians, as followers of Christ. The reason why the world has trouble understanding, well, why would you be kind when other people are mean? Why would you go a second mile? Why would you be gracious and generous to people who can't ever possibly repay you? This is what the world doesn't understand, these sorts of things, because it doesn't, at least not yet, they didn't know him. They don't know Jesus. And so, as children of God, being part of the family of God, we're to carry on the family resemblance, if you will. And just as God was loving and gracious and merciful in inviting everyone to be a part of God's family, just as Jesus was loving and gracious and merciful and kind to everyone he encountered, except for those who opposed God's good and gracious will, who tended to be people in religious authority, we are called in the same way to carry on the family resemblance. And just as people can look at our children and see traces of who their mother or dad was, in the same way people should be able to look at you and at me and say, oh, I can tell she or he is a child of God because I see the family resemblance with Jesus and with a loving Father.